How to destroy Laxasia. There are tips here for both if you bring the Spectre or don't bring the Spectre. I beat her in both methods, and it does change the flight slightly. So if you're in either camp, please bear with me. I will give you at least a few tips to help out in both cases. Either way, setup-wise, bring as many throwables as you want. I don't think she's slow enough to hit with many of them, but there are instances where these are useful, particularly when she's floating. I highly recommend bringing the grinder with the perfection grindstone on it. Again, this is mostly for the second phase, and you're going to want two uses for this because there's a thing that she definitely does at least twice per battle that you are going to want to use this on. In addition, for those using the Spectre, bring along 2 heals. That is going to allow you to make sure the Spectre makes it to the second phase. This is basically interchangeable with the grindstone. If you're bringing the Spectre, bring this. If you're not bringing the Spectre, bring this. This is because, as you'll see later, this is actually going to help you do extra damage, which is majorly important with how aggressive she is in phase 2. Obviously, this requires a bit of quartz. Other things that I have with quartz is repairing the weapon when I use a grindstone and a few other bits and bobs. But there's not really anything crazy. Obviously, we have the full 10 heals. And gear-wise, there's not really very much in the way of Legion arms that I found were very good. I tried using this puppet string. Sometimes it works, but again, she moves way too fast for it to work a lot. I really enjoy using the booster glaive with the cutting saw blade, but this method that I'm about to show you shouldn't really matter which weapon you use, as long as you're comfortable using it. So bring your favorite weapon. That's what I would advise. Make sure you are in light mode. That should be the case for basically every build at this point, so make sure you have enough capacity for that. I like to bring stamina regen. I take extra damage for my Fable slots because I like it, and always being able to dodge is extremely useful. Lastly then, make sure you have the best defense items you have available. We got the Later 350. This, if you don't know where it is at the merchant in chapter 9. He's in the collapsed apartment. Abandoned apartment in chapter 9. Get the shot cartridge on, and I like to have slash and pierce on, so I don't think much of her damage is strike, but I really don't know the actual precisities of that. So just make sure your defenses are up to date and everything else is all ready. And then whether or not you're bringing a Spectre, we can go ahead and begin the fight. And so to start off the first phase, usually I'm going to go with like 60% of the time, maybe even 70. It's definitely not 100 though. She will start off the fight charging at you. This is actually a very nice attack once you learn the rhythm of it. If you just move to your left, her right, and then as she gets closer, you take a dodge. She'll shove you a little bit, but then you can get in there with 1 or 2 attacks, depending on how fast your weapon speed is. Very nice little opening for damage, especially early on in the fight. If you have the Spectre in on this, I recommend trying to keep the aggro on yourself rather than Spectre. This is because the Spectre will actually hit the shield on the back and therefore allow you to do damage from behind, because you can't do that at the beginning of the fight. So I find that really, really useful. In addition, Laxasia has like massive combos, and if they go on the Spectre, it's going to go down really, really fast. This just isn't all that useful to you. So a lot of the attacks in this phase are not all that hard to avoid, in my opinion. If you're good at the rhythm game, you can stand there and you can parry a lot of them. Just be aware that a lot of the combos are kind of slow and sluggish, and sometimes when you kind of gut feelings telling you that the combo's over, it's not, and there's an extra swing. Something that is easy to read though is that most of the red attacks are generally at the end of combos. So that means if you want to do a charged R2 or something a little bit damaging at the end of one of those, you can often time them pretty nicely. Now, when she does like an overhead slam into the ground, if you're close to her, you need to back off a little bit, because it'll usually result in a lightning explosion. If she does it while you're kind of far away, make sure you run to the side, because she will often try and target you with a ranged AoE. It's not the worst in this phase. It does obviously get harder in the second phase, but just make sure that you're aware of that. She will sometimes gear up and do like this 20 odd, I haven't counted, long ass combo. You'll know the one that I mean. Now, it's almost in like 3 phases. There's the first phase, she does like a big set swings. There's the second phase, which is almost identical. You can run away from both of those pretty comfortably. The third one, she kind of like shifts her stance a little bit, and you'll kind of see what I mean when you're watching the fight. When she does that, that means she's getting ready to do a double spin. Step back a little bit so you can just run out the way of the first one, and then if you can dodge through the second one, that's actually a very good time to actually get some more damage in as well. That was one of the key things that I had to do when I did her in solo, so just kind of bear that in mind as you're going through the fight. Lastly, during the first phase, she does have a taunt move where she'll point the sword at you. If you can do enough damage to stagger her, you can stop the ensuing combat, but it is not that easy to do. And basically what she's going to do here, she's going to try to attempt to skewer you 3 times. Now, I find the first 2 are really forgiving for some reason. In fact, sometimes it looks like it should hit you and it doesn't, and then you get the parry, But the third one is really, really vicious. I find the best way to avoid it, and I didn't avoid it in the video, is to run directly away from her during the third stab. That should stop her from doing it. Now, for whatever reason, she didn't do this to me when I tried using the Spectre. I don't know if that just confuses the AI in some way, but it's just something worth noting. In the second phase, she obviously gets way faster, but also way more fragile. Now, if you have the Spectre with you, I recommend running forward, but not all the way forward, because she's going to fire a little lightning at the Spectre and then slam down, and you want to be ready to get in there doing damage as soon as she hits the ground, but not so close that you get caught by the AoE. If you're going in solo, immediately apply the grindstone that we brought in with us and block. You are then going to be ready to basically reflect all of the lightning straight back at her. And if you continue blocking when she slams, you also won't get staggered. You can go straight in for a charged R2. Get yourself some good damage in there. That's going to take between 20 and 25% of the health off right at the beginning of the fight. And I just cannot stress enough how useful that is. Now then, for the rest of this fight, she's extremely aggressive. Some of her moves are very, very hard for me to read. And it's difficult for me to recommend how to avoid all of them. You can't really run away from any of them either. So you are basically either going to want to block a lot of the attacks so you can continue applying the grindstone if you want, but I don't recommend it because we're going to talk about that in a second. Or you can block them normally and learn some of the rhythm. This is where having the ability to heal yourself through parries is rather useful, because it means you can like block a couple, get a parry off, block a couple, get a parry off, and that's just going to keep your health topped up through the fight, and is astonishingly useful whenever you're fighting anything solo. In fact, that's exactly what I had to do against the Nameless Puppet. Now, you'll see a noticeable point during the second phase when she decides she's going to float back up into the air and start firing lightning at you again. One of them is slow and one of them is fast. The fast one, you kind of just want to run away a little bit. She's going to slam into the floor and then there'll be like a lightning AoE. She leaves enough of a delay to make you think that you can get some damage in. Don't be fooled. Just get out of the way of it. If she's going a bit longer, and I think she usually glows red when she does this, that means she's gearing up to do more lightning at you again. If you have saved the second grindstone, here is an amazing place to reapply it again, because you can basically do the exact same thing you did at the beginning of the fight. That basically means you can get 40 to 50% of her health down just in those two moves, as long as you can outlast her. Obviously, if you have the Spectre with you, make sure you've healed it up, because otherwise, she's just going to come and pan it, and it's going to go straight down. Both times for me, she's always targeted the Spectre. She has not targeted me at all with this move when I've had the Spectre in the fight. So I don't know how programmed that is into the boss. Maybe sometimes it doesn't do that, but for me, that is just kind of how it's gone as I've used the Spectre in this fight in particular. Overall, Laxasia is extremely tough. If you get through this fight, you should give yourself a pat on the head. Probably harder than almost any boss in Elden Ring for me. Realistically, if you follow everything in this video, you shouldn't have too much trouble beating her. Now, if this video helps you, let me know in the comments that you've beaten her, because I would really, really like to know. Leave me a like on the video, and I'll catch you all in the next one.